We're going to learn how to do color correction inside After Effects. When you open up the project, you'll see that we've got 5 shots. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to leave the first half of the shot uncorrected and just correct the second shot so that when you render it I can see an A-B of your work. I've also gone to the trouble of locking off the aqua layers so that you don't accidentally color correct them. So we'll just be changing the red on each of these shots. First thing we need to do is get into the color correction workspace, and so we will click on this arrow and click on color. We will right click in this world and look at all the preset scopes, and basically the only one that we need, the only two that are useful is the RGB color parade and the vector scope, and that one is not as important to me as it used to be. And so all we're going to do is play with the RGB parade. That's the only one that we want to keep. It's pretty darn useful as long as once these shapes look the same, that's how we know we'll have white balance. This shot was shot with the DSLR camera, and they tend to get a little, the sensors are kind of yellow. So the next thing we have to do is go into color correction, find Lumetri color, and drop that onto our shot, and then it will open up over here. We'll start with just the basic color correction, and where we begin is by setting our black level and kind of work our way up, cheating to our color temperature changers in a second. So let's lift up our black level and then pull it back down until it just touches 0, because 0 is black in this world, 0%, and 100% is white. Let's go ahead and push up our whites, and we'll just leave them right there for right now. Now let's do some color correction, and basically all I'm going to be doing is looking at these 3 waveforms in order to make the shapes the same. So the first temperature is a color temperature, so it's the difference between blue and orange, and so I'm just going to pull those down until basically red and blue look pretty much together. Tint is the difference between green and magenta, and so that will change our green. And so now these guys look pretty close, and if we look at this shot, then it looks pretty white balanced. So there's our before, there's our after. Let's go into our shadows. So basically our black line is set, but if we pull down the shadows, it's taking the middle, which is the gamma, and it's taking the mids and it's pushing them towards that black. And with highlights it does the same thing with the gamma, but pushing the highlights towards the white. And so we'll just brighten up the shot a little bit. There is a contrast and exposure control. They don't change the color temperature. And then we have this saturation control, which can add more color to it. And so actually I'm just going to pull just a little bit of the color out. And so then we have a nice color balance shot. Let's move on to our next shot. We'll select that. We will add our Lumetri to it. And when you look at the RGB parade, you'll see there's a lot of blue in this shot. That's because the color temperature of the camera was set wrong. It was set at 3200 degrees, which is for tungsten light, and we were shooting outside where the average color temperature is 5600 degrees. So basically we've got a lot of blue that we need to pull out of this image. So let's go into our basic color correction tools, and let's try to set a basic white balance. And our shapes look pretty good right about here. And so basically all we need to do is to pull down this red highlight to match the green. And so let's go down to curves. Let's choose the red channel, And then all we're going to do is just pull down those highlights until that they match those green highlights. And now we see that our mid-range is too low, and so we will just push those back up. And I want to straighten this out a little bit. Okay, and so then we've got a good kind of starting shape here. So let's go back to our blacks and set that. And let's go ahead and pull up our whites. And so now we need to get these guys to match up a little bit better. So let's play with our tint to get our green and our red going there. So that looks all right. And let's play with our blue channel a little bit and push it a little brighter to match. Pull some of this back down. So let's see the before and after. That's actually of the curve. Okay, I'm going to say that that looks pretty good. Next thing that we want to do is we want to add a I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to move to the head of the shot. We want to add a adjustment layer. And I'm going to hit shift command D to split that layer. And what I want to do is I want to add a vignette, a dark vignette around this shot to create a sense of contrast and draw our eyes to the middle. So we will we'll highlight that adjustment layer. We'll go to the mask tool, we will choose the ellipse, and we'll double click on that. And then with this arrow and box, I'm going to click and hold and select our mask. And we are going to drag our points in. I'm going to grab a Lumetri and I'm going to drop it on there. Gonna have to do that a different way, so let's go to levels. Drop a levels on here, and all we're going to do is darken the image a little bit. Now we're on the wrong side, so we're at this mask. We're going to make it a subtract mask to put our image on the outside. I'm going to click off the mask tool so that we can see the difference, and I'm going to hit F for feather, and let's put 350 pixel blend, and now we can darken it a little more. So basically we want to darken the edges without seeing them vignette, right? So this is too much. That's not enough, so somewhere right in there is where we want to be. I'm going to click and hit return, and I'm going to name this vignette. And so this is nice. So I mean, we definitely see a difference, but we're not calling attention to the vignette itself. So we'll call that good. Move on to the next shot. So the first thing that we want to do is to balance the shot. So we'll drag the Lumetri into it. We'll basic color correction, and let's white balance on this light right there. looks like our black level is fine, but it's a dark shot on purpose. But let's go ahead and pull up the levels a little bit to be able to see a little bit better. And so we've got a good kind of basic shot here. And so now what I want to play with is some of the creative looks that we can add to this. So let's see what that one looks like. We're telling a horror movie story. So let's say that this kind of bleach bypass desaturated look we've decided helps tell our story the best. We can then control the intensity of that look and so then let's look at the before and after. And then I'm going to hold shift to go right to the head of that shot. I'm going to hit Shift Command D, and let's drop that same vignette on top of this. Let's go to the next shot. We've got a very tungsten world and a very daylight world, and so we kind of need to find that happy medium between the two. But let's go to the beginning of this shot. You'll need to unlock it, and let's take a look at the chip chart that's right here. And as we can tell, it's like we've got a pretty good white balance on this shot based on this chip chart, but she looks very orange here, and so the chip chart isn't really being very useful to us right now. So let's add a Lumetri to this shot, and let's try white balancing on this wall. And by making this wall more white, we kind of get a better average balance in this world. Our highlights are a little goofed up, but let's see what we can get away with. Let's first start with setting our blacks. Let's pull up our whites. Let's bring down our highlights. Let's see what happens if we now up our exposure. Next, so I want to do, in order to blend these two worlds, we'll pull down our saturation a little bit. So our flesh tone looks pretty normal here. And doesn't look too bad right there. Let's see if we can add a little bit more blue into her face. And then let's go to our curve section and play with the color of her shirt right here. So what we want to do is let's pick hue versus saturation, and we'll take this color picker and we will pick the color of her shirt, and we'll hit this. We'll move this slider so that what got selected is easier to grab here on our viewer. And so basically, if we go up with this, that's going to boost the saturation, and if we go down with this, it's going to decrease the saturation. So that's Effectively what that does, I'm going to hit undo, Command Z twice to go back to the beginning, and now let's go and pick her skin color, and let's desaturate just the skin a little bit, and look at the before and after, and now we've got a much more normal looking skin tone. And let's pull down the shadows a little bit. Pull up the highlights. And we'll call that shot good. We'll go to our final shot where we've got this sea of mimes. And we're going to do some color correction through stacking our Lumetri tool. So we'll select that layer, drop on our first Lumetri, and let's just give that a really basic color correction with our tint. And our white balance. Let's set our blacks. Let's set our whites. Let's pull down our shadows, and it will increase some saturation for us. And then let's pull down the highlights a little bit as well. Alright, and now we will add another instance of Lumetri, and we will go to curves, and basically we want to turn this grass pink. So we're going to use hue versus hue. We'll select that area, and we will kind of push up into the pink zone, and then grass is green and yellow, so we'll feather out that spectrum until we get better coverage on our grass. Alright, there's our before and after. Let's add another instance of Lumetri. And now we want to use hue versus luma, and we want to darken this area. Slide in over here so that we can see both ends of the handle. We want to darken it a bit, spread it out so that it's not quite so blocky. Add another instance of Lumetri. And we want to boost the saturation in here. Okay. And now I just want to clean up this sidewalk. So we'll add another Lumetri. And we'll pick a hue versus saturation. We'll pick our sidewalk. And we'll lower the saturation until it looks gray. All right. So all we have to do now is export it. Name it your name. Let's make it Apple ProRes Lite. And render that and post it on Canvas.